What is your least favorite chore? Cleaning up the kitchen after making a meal is one of my least favorite things to do. I like to make the mess. I just don't like cleaning it up. You ever been there? We all have something that we don't enjoy doing, but we end up doing it anyway. I've learned over the years that part of my commitment to my family is to serve them by cleaning up the kitchen after making a meal. I do it, but I don't really enjoy it. This week, we're talking about the discipline of service. Why does service matter? All of us are here because someone served us. None of us changed our own diapers. None of us have cooked all of our own meals. There's truly not a thing as a self-made man or woman. We're all dependent on people to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Service simply makes the world go round. Service also serves to remind us that we are not the center of the universe, that we are not the only person who lives in the world. There are other people that we need to be considering constantly. Service is a peculiar way of living in the world that sees other people and the world as more important than ourselves. This is a challenging way to live for a couple of reasons. One is that it goes against our human tendency to desire to be served. It's amazing how entitled we can become at a restaurant if our server doesn't bring us our drinks fast enough. Most children don't naturally pick up after themselves or volunteer to clean the bathroom. Service is not our natural tendency. Two is that it goes against the human definition of leadership. We saw this with Jesus' disciples. They found themselves arguing about who is the greatest. I can only imagine Jesus shaking his head as the disciples gave their various arguments for why they were the best. As Richard Foster notes in his book, whenever there's trouble over who is the greatest, there is trouble over who is the least. Service helps us to follow one of the most extraordinary acts of Jesus. As Jesus washed their feet, he told them in John 13:14, "If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet." Simply put, service is the Jesus way of living. What is the discipline of service? Foster challenges us to understand that it is one thing to act like a servant. It's quite another thing to be a servant. It's easy to get caught up in what he calls self-righteous service versus true service. Let's check on some of the differences that he highlights. Self-righteous service comes through human effort. True service comes from a relationship with the divine other deep inside. Self-righteous service is impressed with the big deal. True service finds it almost impossible to distinguish the small from the large service. Self-righteous service requires external rewards. True service rests contented in hiddenness. Self-righteous service is highly concerned about results. True service is free of the need to calculate results. Self-righteous service picks and chooses whom to serve. True service is indiscriminate in its ministry. Self-righteous service is affected by whims and moods. True service ministers simply and faithfully because there is a need. It knows that the feeling to serve can often be a hindrance to true service. Self-righteous service is temporary. True service is a lifestyle. Self-righteous service is insensitive. True service can withhold its service as freely as perform it. Self-righteous service fractures community. True service builds community. The discipline of service requires the grace of humility. If we want to become humble, service is the pathway. I love what Martin Luther King Jr. said, anyone can be great because anyone can serve. To have true service, then, we give up the right to be in charge. When we choose to be a servant, we surrender the right to decide who and when we will serve. We become available and vulnerable. So here's the drill: serving others. We're going to have two options that you can choose from today. The service of small things, number one. This is the practice of assisting or doing the mundane, the trifling, the simplest acts with a posture of a servant. Maybe it is doing that chore that you hate when nobody can see you or give you credit. Maybe you will pick up trash in your street. Maybe you will walk around the grocery store and help people reach the top shelf. It's walking around and asking the question, what small thing can I do right now to serve someone else? Second idea, the service of listening. Now, this may be more challenging than the first because in the service of small things, you're doing something, you're acting. But in the service of listening, then you're just standing or sitting there. During the service of listening, you're not trying to give advice or fix the person or the situation. You're merely being present with compassion and patience. Your presence is truly your present to them. Again, I love what Martin Luther King Jr. said. Anyone can be great because anyone can serve. And our world is in desperate need for selfless servants. So we're now going to turn it over to your group leader, facilitator, to help us to discuss together about the video today. And as a reminder, when you gather next week, you'll reflect on what you have learned in your experience of service.